We're continuing Al Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim Hilchot Shabbat. We are at the tail end of Siman Resh Tzadi Gimel, the halachot of Havdalah and Arvit of Motzei Shabbat. We mentioned that you cannot get out of Shabbat until you see 3 small stars. The Tefillah of Arvit, generally speaking, we do it as late as possible to add a little bit from Chol to Kodesh. We don't want to get rid of Shabbat. We try to hold on to it a little extra. But Halacha Gimel says, what if you are in rush? What if you have to take care of business, take care of important things after Shabbat, right immediately after Shabbat? Can I daven early in Motzei Shabbat? Can I daven Motzei Shabbat Tfilat Arvit earlier than Shkiyat HaChama? Obviously, you're not doing any melacha, that's pashut. And Shulchan Aruch says, yes, you can. And this is really brought in already in the Gemara itself, the way the Tur explains in the name of Rabbi Gaon, Mishahu Anus, a person that is in extenuating circumstances, Kegon Sarich Lachshich Ala Tchum Lidvar Mitzvah, he has to stay by the borders of this town, of the city, to immediately exit the town after Shabbat finishes, for going for a Dvar Mitzvah, to take care of some mitzvah. Yachol Litpalel Shel Motzei Shabbat and Plaka Mincha. You could daven from Plaka Mincha already Tfilat Arvit, which is normal weekday, also is the earliest time for Arvit. Plaka Mincha, we explained already before, that it's an hour and 15 minutes. So 2.5 hours is the time of Mincha Ketana. So half of that would be an hour and 15 minutes Sha'ot Zmaniyot of time prior to night, and that is the earliest time a person could daven. So you could daven on Motzei Shabbat, also Tefillah Motzei Shabbat, even though that's Mamash Shabbat still. And you could do even Havdalah right away after Arvit. But of course, you're not saying a bracha of Meoreh Ha'esh because you cannot handle fire yet. That would be considered a melacha, but you could say even the bracha of Havdalah, Borei Pri HaGefen, and Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol, and then go stand by the edge of the town, and to exit immediately after Shabbat ends, to go for Dvar Mitzvah. The onset of the Tefillah of Motzei Shabbat, the minhag is to elongate the Vehu Rachum and the Barachot Hashem HaMevorach, because you're adding a few seconds. That by itself is a sign that you're adding a little bit to the Tefillah of Motzei Shabbat. Hence, you're adding to the Shabbat by those few seconds. Kedei leosif mechol al hakodesh, says the Mishna Berura. Hainu she'olech mibeto mibe'od yom ad sof hatchum. Already, during the course of Shabbat, before sundown, you're going from your house until the last place that you could go, until the end of your Tchum Shabbat. V'yoshev sham, you're sitting there ad ha'erev until it becomes night. Immediately after nightfall, you could go to the Dvar Mitzvah that you're headed towards. And of course, we're talking about the case that by Tchum, by the end of the Tchum Shabbat, you don't have a Havdalah cup with wine, and you can't really say Havdalah. Therefore, you say Arvit, Mipalaka Mincha, you say Havdalah, and then you head out to the Tchum. Even though that you can daven Motzei Shabbat's Arvit from Plaka Mincha, the Achronim are not too happy with this setting. The davar tamuah hu lerabim. It's very strange that a person is davening the Tefillah of Motzei Shabbat, and it's still Shabbat, still middle of the day, basically, for all practical purposes. Gam shema yavou lehakel bimlacha. Also, people who see this, they say, oh, well, after Plaka Mincha already, you can be so lenient, and they may actually come to do melacha. So therefore, we don't want to allow that. Therefore, especially in our generation, that the minhag is like the Rabbanan, that we daven mincha all the way until sundown. Then we have chosen already, not like the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda. This is Machloket Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan in the Gemara, whether or not the time of mincha is up until Plaka Mincha, and after Plaka Mincha is Arvit. Or maybe mincha could be done until the end of the day, and then only then could be done Arvit. That by the way, that's the reason that we try to stay away from doing Tarti de Satri, right? Parenthetically, an important parenthesis, that if you have a minyan that davens early, and this happens many times in the winter time is easier, but in summertime, when you have Kabbalat Shabbat, you don't want the people to leave too late to go home. So many times what happens is a Kila is davening mincha, and then doing Kabbalat Shabbat and Arvit, and both of them could be davening mincha after Plaka Mincha and Arvit before Shkia. So that would be Tarti de Satri, because the reason that you could daven Arvit before Shkia is Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, that after Plaka Mincha is already night. Well, if it's night, how are you davening Mincha after Plaka Mincha? Right? So that either you want to have Mincha right before Plaka Mincha and Arvit after Plaka Mincha, or you want Mincha before Shkia after Plaka Mincha, and then Arvit would be after Shkia at least, or after nightfall. So says the Mishna Berura, therefore, you should not necessarily be doing this. The poskim are not too happy. Now, the brachav besamim, if you're doing havdalah already, is saying on wine, berpia gefen, and the brachav during kodesh lachol. How about besamim in the middle? Besamim usually is when you lose the neshama yetera, you want to say besamim. This the Pri Megadim has a doubt about it in Siman Resh Sadi Tet, but in Resh Sadi Zayin, he already says that a person should say even besamim as a part of the set of the brachot of Havdalah. And if you find besamim after Shabbat again, after nightfall, you say besamim again, no problem. And that's what Kaf HaChaim sides with as well. But at the end of the day, there are those, for instance, Rabbi Moshe Levi in Menuchat Ahava, he says a person should not say besamim if you're saying Havdalah before Shkia, because it's not time for it, and therefore it will be a chashash of hefsek. So therefore he sides that the person should not be saying besamim. Now, the Mishna Berura says, you should say Kriyat Shema again. Of course, if you're davening Arvit that early, you want to repeat Kriyat Shema afterwards again, which is, again, this is something the Tur already writes, that that the Tur writes you should even wait until nightfall for the entire Birkat Kriyat Shema and Shema. You're just davening Arvit, the Shemona Esrei, you're not davening the Birkat Kriyat Shema, and so on. But again, Dr. Moshe does not agree with that necessarily. He says, for us, we daven, we say the Kriyat Shema Mibod Yom, and you don't have to wait, you just repeat it afterwards again, and that's what should come out according to Ari Kadosh as well, because according to Arizal, you need to say Kriyat Shema, and only then to daven afterwards. This becomes, by the way, a question for someone that's late for Arvit, right? You come late for Arvit, and that's the only minyan that you've got. So what do you do exactly? Do you skip Birkat Kriyat Shema Shema, and then you start just with Shemona Esrei, in order to be able to daven with the tzibur? You come in, they're about to start Shemona Esrei. Do you daven Shemona Esrei with them, and then after Arvit you catch up, or do you start from the beginning and miss Tefillah B'tzibur or a great Chelek of the Tefillah B'tzibur. So this becomes a machloket in Chacham and Kaf HaChaim. Chacham says, better to daven B'tzibur. That's a b'diavad situation, you don't have any other minyan afterwards. Better to daven B'tzibur and then say the Kriyat Shema and the Birkot Kriyat Shema afterwards. And Kaf HaChaim holds that Al Pi Arizal, you must daven Shemona Esrei only after Shema. Therefore, you should daven Keseder from the beginning. Start. Try to catch as possible to Tefillah B'tzibur. If you didn't do it, that would be also fine. So that basically concludes our Siman Resh Tzadi Gimel. We start Resh Tzadi Daled, the halachot of Havdalah in the Tefillah. Now we daven Arvid. The first Havdalah that you do is Atah Honantanu, which is part of the Tefillah already. Omrim Havdalah bechonen adat. We say Havdalah as part of Tefillah in the bracha of chonen adat. The Gemara asks, why do you do it as part of the bracha of Atah chonen? Because if you have no da'at, Havdalah minayin. The only way a person could differentiate between things is when you have da'at. A person that doesn't have da'at does not differentiate between things. And again, we have a very interesting Rashi. Tatiyahu Salman used to say, Rashi says in the bracha of Havdalah, we say ben kodesh lechol, ben or lechoshech, u ben Yisrael la'amim. He used to say, we're supposed to differentiate between light and darkness. That's why you turn off lights. You have the light that you have hana'ah from. Ben kodesh lechol and ben Yisrael la'amim. He said the difference between Yisrael la'amim in our minds should be like the difference between kodesh v'chol and or lechoshech. It should be black and white. To feel we're different than the goyim. They have their hobbies, what excites them. The Chazon Ish used to say what the street calls fun. The Jewish terminology for it is karet, right? So to have a mentality of Havdalah, it's not just the technicality of Hilchot Shabbat, but part of the Havdalah that we say, the bracha Havdalah that we say on Shabbat, which is part of what Shabbat is all about, is to sanctify the day of Shabbat, to separate during Shabbat ourselves from the Amim, to focus on those things that give us the kelim, the tools, to understand that we are unique, that we are Am Hashem, and that's the Havdalah that's necessary, that we say, everyone says Shabbat, ben or lechoshech ben Yisrael la'amim. The clarity that we should have in the Havdalah of ben Yisrael la'amim has to be the same clarity that you have in or lechoshech, the differentiating factor between light and darkness itself. That's something very powerful to think about as we start the Siman that discusses the halachot of Havdalah. Now, Shulchan Aruch continues, if you made a mistake and you did not say Havdalah mashlim tefilato, then you finish your tefillah. You don't have to go back. If you missed Atah honantanu, it's not like one of those things that you have to go back to repeat it. You just, go on with your tefillah. Because anyways, you have to say Havdalah on a cup of wine, the Havdalah that we say. Now, the difference that it does make, says the Shulchan Aruch, and that's halacha, is now you have to seriously be concerned and careful not to eat anything before Havdalah. In other words, if you said Atah honantanu in the tefillah, and then by mistake you're still not supposed to eat anything until, now water exception, but you're not supposed to eat anything until you say Havdalah on the cup. Now, for example, if you made a mistake, right, and you ate something before Havdalah, so what's the halacha? Nothing, because you said Havdalah in the tefillah, you already were yotzeh midoraita, you were yotzeh the concept of Havdalah. So even though that you're not supposed to eat anything until you say Havdalah on the cup, if you did eat by mistake, it's fine. But if you didn't say Havdalah in the tefillah, if by mistake you forgot to say Atahonantanu, and then you forgot and you ate before you say Havdalah in the cup, then it undoes your tefillat arvit. You have to daven again. That's something you have to be very mindful of. And that's the Shulchan Aruch says, "V'im ta'am kodem shivdil ala kos, sarich lachzor ulhavdil." B'tefillah you must go back now and daven again. Afal gav the Kaimalan says the Chafetz Chaim, the im ta'am ve'achal kodem avdalah, that if you by mistake tasted something, ate something before Havdalah, yachol le'avdil achar kach, you could still do Havdalah before, afterwards. Mikol makom kan de ta'ah v'gam betfilah, here that you also messed up in the tefillah, so he said no sort of Havdalah at all, and you ate, kan sinan le v'sarich lachzor l'itpalel or l'avdil betfilah. You have to go back, daven, and then, only then, you could say Havdalah, and you could eat afterwards. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Ta'am velo yivdil b'tfilah ve'en lo kos b'tchila b'layla. If you made a mistake, Ta'am velo yivdil, you made a mistake, you forgot to say Atahonantanu in the tefillah, and then you come home, you realize there is no cup of wine to say Havdalah. So you didn't say Havdalah in tefillah, and you can't say Havdalah at home because you have no cup of wine. So what's the halacha? And based on what you know, you're not going to even have a cup tomorrow. It's not that your neighbor has, they're sleeping right now. Tomorrow morning I'm going to knock on the door and get some wine, or go to the store and get some wine. There's no wine to be found. Then you have to go back and daven again, right? But if you know that you're going to get a cup, then tomorrow, then you wait. You could daven. You could say Havdalah rather tomorrow morning. Now, this case of davening, going back to daven, it should be betnai shel nedava, because it's not so clear. Still, the machloket poskim, and you have bread. You could say Havdalah on the bread, right? Many Rishonim hold that just like you could say Kiddush on bread, you could also say Havdalah on the bread. Even though that Lemaaseh we don't paskin like those Rishonim, but the tefillah that you go back to daven should be betnai shel nedava, that you stipulate a condition that if I'm chayav to daven again, this should be my tefillat chiyuv. But if I could be yotze Havdalah with bread, and this tefillah is not a tefillah of chiyuv for me because I was yotze already arvit, then this should be a voluntary nedava, and that would be the way to do it. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Tish'a B'Av shchal yot be'echad b'Shabbat. If you have Tish'a B'Av on Sunday, Ta v'lo yivdil. So how do you do Havdalah? You can't say Havdalah. You're Ta'anit. You're fasting after Shabbat, right? So how can you do that? So you have to do Havdalah into Tefillah, and then you do Havdalah Motzei Shabbat, right? Special Havdalah Motzei Shabbat. So you have to be very careful to do Havdalah in the Tefillah and not miss it, because there is no Havdalah on Motzei Shabbat other than that. But says the Shulchan Aruch, even with all that said, if you made a mistake on Tish'a B'Av shchal yot be'echad b'Shabbat, and you didn't say Havdalah in the Tefillah, and sarich lachzor l'itpalel, you don't have to go back and daven again because you're not eating anything, right? Anyways, you're doing Havdalah Motzei Shabbat, Motzei fast, and you're not eating anything between the Motzei Shabbat and the Havdalah tomorrow night. So therefore, but the Eved, you don't have to go back and daven again. Says the Shulchan Aruch in Seif Dalet, במקום שאמרו שאינו חוזר להתפלל מיד, כשסיים הברכה אין לו לחזור, in place that the Chazal have instructed us that you don't go back to daven right away, כשסיים הברכה אין לו לחזור. Right away after you finish a bracha, you can no longer go back. אף על פי שלא פתח בברכה שלאחריה. So you finished ברוך אתה השם חונן הדעת, and you're like, oops, I forgot to say אתה חוננתנו. You don't go back. Just go on in your tefillah. To which the Mishna Berura explains, Hainu she'izkir Hashem shel siyum bracha. That already, when you say Baruch Atah Hashem, that's already considered that you finished the bracha, even though that's in some instances we say, well, even if you said Baruch Atah Hashem, you should finish with saying Lamedeni Chukecha, which is a pasuk. Baruch Atah Hashem Lamedeni Chukecha is a pasuk, and then go back to say what you need to say. Over here is not that din, because even saying Baruch Atah Hashem Lamedeni Chukecha in middle of tefillah is hefsek. What are you doing saying that? So if it was for something that you're going to be ruined over if you say the bracha, fine, I understand. But if it's not for something that you're going to be ruined over, like if you say it, you didn't say it, fine. No. You say Havdalah ala kos. Therefore, if you forgot to say Atah Honantanu and you said Baruch Atah Hashem thinking I'm going to finish Chonen Adat, and then you remembered that you didn't say Atah Honantanu and you want to say Lamedeni Chukecha and go back to Atah Honantanu, you can't do that. You said Baruch Atah Hashem, having in mind that I'm going to say Chonen Adat, you just say Chonen Adat, even though that you remembered that you didn't say Atah Honantanu, and then you'll rely on the Havdalah that you're going to have on the cup. Says Shulchan Aruch in Seif Hey b'makom shamru she'eno chozer, in a place that the Chazal said you don't go back. Im ratza le'achmir. What if I want to be machmir? I am very machmir, right? I want to do it. Chazal said you don't have to go back. I want to go back. Am I allowed to? Says the Shulchan Aruch, Im ratza le'achmir al atzmo lachazor, im siyem tfilato rashai, אבל אם עדיין לא סיים תפילתו אינו רשאי. If you finish your tefillah, then you're allowed to, because you're doing it b'torat nedava. You're doing a tenai shel nedava, therefore you're allowed to do it. But in the middle of the tefillah, you're not allowed to all of a sudden go back to Atah Chonen. That would be a lot of bracha she'ena srichas, and it will get you into trouble again. You have, I always say, yesh mekel v'yesh kal. There's someone that's mekel, he knows this sugya, he's mekel, and then there's someone that's kal, he's a lightweight. That's not important, that's not, everything's mutar. That's a kal. And there's someone that understands the sugya, and from the clarity that he has in the sugya, he could be mekel. Kocha dehetera adif, that's something even more important. And then on the other hand, you have machmir, you have someone that really knows the sugya and understands that this is kedai to be machmir, that's kedai to be machmir. And then you have someone that's chamor. Everything is asur. It's better not to do it. Everything is better not to do. That's also not an approach. Not everything a person has to be mahmir. You have to measure properly, halachically, when is and when is not the appropriate scenario to be mekel or to be mahmir, which concludes our Siman Resh Sadi Dalet. Be'ezrat Hashem will continue Siman Resh Sadi Hey. Halachot of the Havdalah for Shaliach Tzibur in the days to come. Chazak u'Baruch.